So if you're a new automation developer, or you're not even techie at all, you've just hired a new developer, you need to ensure what you get launched is actually robust, so you don't lose control of your robot. And they're really easy to maintain as well. So in this video, we're going to reveal 5 things you need to make sure that your automation has before it's launched. These are standard development best practices, which will make sure you are about to launch something that won't give you an immediate headache as soon as it's launched, and it won't give your team a series of even bigger headaches later down the line. You know, I've streamlined and managed automation support teams at tier 1 consultancies, and take it from me, if you've got these things sorted, you'll save yourself and your team a whole lot of pain. Hi guys, I'm Tony and this is Intelligent Automation Simplified. And I'm all about simplifying intelligent automation for business leaders and professionals just like you to level up your knowledge so that you're empowered to optimize your business and discover new technologies in a leaner and faster way. So if you're looking to accelerate your learning curve and accelerate your projects and programs, don't forget to like this button and hit that subscribe so that you get notified every time I release a new video. So a lot of teams who are new to automation, they're doing DIY automation. They're doing it themselves, which is great. And this is where they're upskilling and training internal staff to develop automation. It makes sense. It's low cost, it's fast to get started. You could probably get your staff trained up in automation in less than a couple of months and have them automating simple processes in no time at all, gradually moving into more complex automation as their experience grows. And in fact, it's actually the way that the industry is heading, because software vendors are making their automation and AI software really easy to use. It's what's called the citizen developer. It's so that almost anyone in your company can intuitively build their own robots. I guess it's similar to how we can now all use Excel. However, if you're leading the team, or you're responsible for the outcomes, or you're using the technology, or you're the developer herself, undoubtedly, this may make you feel a little bit nervous. Not to worry, if you ensure that your development team is applying these 6 tips, your bots can't go far wrong. In fact, it would make any bots as reliable as a German train service. Well, at least better than the London ones. Tip 1 is documentation. And if you're feeling a little lazy or you just want to get the automation built, right, you may be quite tempted to just skimp on writing up clear documentation or any documentation at all on your automations. But documentation is probably the most important part of every development, be that developing automation bots or any type of code. This is the knowledge transfer between the original developer and anyone who wants to pick this up in the future. Maybe it's not for you as the original developer, but it's for someone else who takes over after you. Even as the original developer, you will inevitably forget how on earth you built this, and you'll be thankful for your solution design document. So the solution design document is for automation, and it tells future developers who want to improve on it or enhance your robots. But it's also for support engineers who are responsible for investigating errors and fixing bugs. And this document tells them how to fully, clearly and unambiguously understand the logic of how this bot was put together and all the different components that were used. And this is so the code can easily and quickly be edited. I remember we had lots of issues with this, or lack of this, where developers in the delivery side were essentially rush building bots with lots of errors, and they were just chucking it over the wall, so to speak, to the support team, which I had inherited. These old bots were buggy and they had little or no documentation. So the developers who actually built them were long gone. They'd moved on to another contract. And so this is what we call technical debt for when teams cut corners. It means that it's going to cost the business more on support costs. If you cut corners when delivering and building the bot, you're just going to be paying higher costs than if you had just built it correctly first time. So as part of this new team who are deployed to fix this mess, we set up quality criteria checkpoints to ensure that we were only accepting robust bots that had clear and unambiguous documentation, as well as having a release management process for our own support engineers so that when they fixed robots, they were making sure that we were only releasing robust developments into production. Tip 2 is modular code, or making things reusable. And this is where you break down an automated process into segments or components, and you build each component individually. And this makes it really simple for the developer to test their own code. You would build part 1, and then you would test part 1. Then you'd move on to building part 2, and then you'll test part 2, and so on. And once you've completed all the components, you can just test all the parts together end to end. And this way the developer can spot an error really early on and can fix it quickly, instead of building everything in one big chunk of code and then trying to figure out where the issues are. And this modularized code makes development much faster because it's easier to share and reuse the code. For example, say the first and last components of a process was log into SAP and log out of SAP. So say another developer has an automated process that needs to log into SAP, they can just use the log into SAP component that had already been built, it is already tested, and it's already signed off. So development teams are using this method in a massive way, where they're slowly building massive libraries of reusable components, which saves time here and there, but massively over time cuts down on development. And teams go one step further by actually going out into the markets and purchasing ready-made bots. And most vendors out there have their own bot marketplace. And it's a whole thing now, which is called the bot economy, where you go online to your favorite automation vendor and you can search for bots and automations, and not just automation, but intelligent automation components that you can download and slot right into your automated process. But obviously it's advisable to have this reviewed by your IT security team. So number 3 is error handling and logging. The bot needs to be developed for every outcome, even the unexpected ones. So you would have, for unexpected errors or situations, a catch-all for non-predetermined scenarios. So the bot is still told how to handle those situations correctly. So when an error occurs, the errors are logged clearly and in a meaningful way, so that support not only understand what type of exception they are, but they know the component that error is in. So this speeds up support. It's quicker to find the part of the code where the error resides so that they can go in and they can fix. And that's even if it's the bot's fault at all. Because there are 2 types of errors. There's system exceptions, and that's if something's wrong with the underlying applications, or maybe the process is done wrong, poorly coded. But then there's also business exceptions. This is where, for example, bad data is fed into the process, and it could be unexpected or not predetermined. However, you still know the type of exception that it is, and this is already predetermined in the documentation, and the bot knows what to do. For example, notify the person in the team that they need to take care of this scenario. So number 4 is commenting and readability. So okay, you've documented the process, you've created the components, your errors are clear and meaningful, so support is really happy. But what if the code is just really messy? It's going to be so exhausting for support to look through your code to understand what on earth is going wrong. Whether it's line code like Automation Anywhere or drag and drop icons, it's important that the code is laid out neatly and presentably. It should be clear and easy to understand, and it should be logical. So different components, and especially process logic like decisions and calculations, should be commented clearly. So the original developer or someone else may return and not know what they did or why. So this is just an additional way to speed up supporting or enhancing your existing robots. Number 5 is variables and referencing. So variables are things that can change depending on the scenario, and references are where you can use these variables in different places throughout the code. And then if you need to change a reference, you just change it in one place and it changes all across the code. And this makes testing and supporting fixes a lot easier. So when you're testing or supporting when you're testing the robot and you realize that the logic is wrong that you put, you can just edit the reference. So let's give you an example. So say the variable was age. So if you hard coded the age and you wrote 21, then no matter how many years go by, it's always going to say 21. So if it's 21 today, then 10 years later it will still say 21. But if you made it a variable, you would just do today's date minus their date of birth. But then let's take a look at referencing. Say you had written that calculation in several parts of the code. Instead of using referencing, if you realized that the calculation was wrong, for example, you wrote date of birth minus today's date, you'd have to go to all the different parts of that code where you had that calculation and change them individually. Whereas with referencing, you just go back to the source calculation, you change it, you update that code, and then it updates everything throughout the whole code. So you just update one place and then it updates everywhere. So real quick, let me know if you're getting value by hitting that like button, and feel free to share this video. Okay, step 6 is test planning. So we mentioned the importance of developers testing their work, and this is what we called SIT testing, or system integrated testing. They're testing the component each at a time, and then they're reviewing the data. And you may want to go one better and have it peer reviewed, so another developer is testing the original developer's code. But also, you want a structured approach to how you do the user acceptance testing. And this is where you go back to the business and have them test the robot to make sure that they're happy with what you've built. So you want to define this test plan beforehand, and this is what the business analyst would do. And this is where they would have worked with the user to get a list of user stories, basically what they want the robot to do. And then putting more detail around that, each user story would have some acceptance criteria. So the user story is, I want the robot to log into SAP. And the acceptance criteria is checking that they use the right email, they use the right password, and then they were able to press the submit button and get into the application. But when creating a test plan, you want to make sure that you're not just testing the positive scenarios, but you're testing the negative scenarios as well. You're testing that it's a robust robot by trying to actually break it, by saying, okay, so it wants to log into this application. What would it do how would it handle not having the right email or the right password? Or what if the internet connection was broken? How would the robot handle that scenario? So that gives you a more robust way of saying, yes, in any scenario, that robot can handle that step. So as a bonus, the 7th tip would be user flexibility. So have you ever built a bot that needed changing? So you had created a robot which only accepted emails from a certain amount of people, say 3 people, but then they had the teams had to raise change requests so that the robot could accept emails from more people, you would end up having loads of change requests and it would overload your automation team. Not to mention that the users of this process would have to wait until you've made those changes. But what if users could make the changes themselves without the need for more development on the robot? So a term that I coin is user flexibility, and I'm sure if you've worked in development, you've used it before. And this is for small changes that don't require development. You can allow users to make these changes. So it just requires a little bit of upfront work and planning so that you can build a step into the process that users have control over. So in the scenario where the robot can only accept 3 emails for it to be triggered to start its automated process, what if you designed it to look at a list in Excel? So it would see those 3 emails and then it would automate. But this approach also allows the team to go into that same Excel that the robot uses and add new emails to that list. So they could add 5, 10 new emails to that list or change some of the original ones, and the robot just goes down the list again in the Excel and can continue doing more process without the team needing to raise a change request or doing further development. And I give you an example of when we did that exact same thing. We understood that multiple teams were doing similar processes. We built the process for one team where they put their email into an Excel template. And then as we rolled this out to new teams, all we needed to do was add their email IDs to the robot list. We scaled this to 5 whole teams without need for a single bit of development. And so this actually doubled the return of investment from that one robot that we built. So guys, thanks for watching this video. And if you're loving these videos, I'd love if you could tap that like button and don't forget to subscribe. And I'll put a list of these development tips in the description. If you've built your robot and if you're ready to launch, make sure you check out the videos, the things that you need to do after you've built your automation. Also make sure that you stay away from these 14 pitfalls that cripple your automation projects. So remember, click that bell, make sure you get notified with all of my new videos. And I'd like to hear which of these 7 tips you're not using right now. Leave your comments below and think about which colleagues you can share this video with so that they can start developing robust robots. Okay guys, see you in the next video. Take care.